Hello there, faithful listener. You've tuned in to Season 7 of the Bible Explained podcast. So make sure to grab your cup of coffee, because today we are going to be discussing the book of 2 Samuel. Well, good morning, friends and faithful listeners. This is Jen with the Bible Explained podcast. And today we're going to be reading this short little story that's kind of snuggled right here in 2 Samuel. But I hope that you guys had a really nice weekend. The weather for me was absolutely fantastic. They called for rain, and we did not get any rain on Friday and Saturday, which was so nice. It was so beautiful. I had my windows open the whole time. I have them open actually right now. And yeah, I celebrated Father's Day with my dad, and I hope that you guys were able to celebrate Father's Day as well. And happy belated Father's Day. I always forget to say it ahead of time because my calendar is pretty bad. It does not tell me the holidays on it. So I need to actually go in and write them all down. I always have a plan to do that, and then I never end up doing it. So happy belated Father's Day, guys. And speaking of fathers, we're going to actually talk about a father kind of today. This is a father that has died. And so David is showing comfort to the son of this particular father. But the son does not accept the comfort, and he does something very, very stupid. So we'll talk about that today. Let's read all of 2 Samuel chapter 10. I'll be reading from the WEB. After this, the king of the children of Ammon died, and Hanun his son reigned in his place. David said, I will show kindness to Hanun the son of Nahash, as his father showed kindness to me. So David sent by his servants to comfort him concerning his father. David's servants came into the land of the children of Ammon. But the princes of Ammon said to Hanun their lord, Do you think that David honors your father in that he has sent comforters to you? Hasn't David sent his servants to you to search the city, to spy it out, and to overthrow it? So Hanun took David's servants, shaved off one half of their beards, and cut off their garments in the middle, even to their buttocks, and sent them away. When they told David this, he sent to meet them, for the men were greatly ashamed. The king said, Wait at Jericho until your beards have grown, and then return. When the children of Ammon saw that they had become odious to David, the children of Ammon sent and hired the Syrians of Beth Rehob and the Syrians of Zobah, 20,000 footmen, and the king of Maacah with 1,000 men, and the men of Tob, 12,000 men. When David heard of it, he sent Joab and all the army of the mighty men. The children of Ammon came out and put the battle in array at the entrance of the gate. The Syrians of Zobah and Rehob and the men of Tob and Maacah were by themselves in the field. Now when Joab saw that the battle was set against him before and behind, he chose all of the choice men of Israel and put them in array against the Syrians. The rest of the people he committed into the hand of Abishai his brother, and he put them in array against the children of Ammon. He said, If the Syrians are too strong for me, then you shall help me. But if the children of Ammon are too strong for you, then I will come and help you. Be courageous, and let's be strong for our people and for the cities of our God, and may Yahweh do what seems good to him. So Joab and the people who were with him came near to the battle against the Syrians, and they fled before him. When the children of Ammon saw that the Syrians had fled, they likewise fled before Abishai, and entered into the city. Then Joab returned from the children of Ammon and came to Jerusalem. When the Syrians saw that they were defeated by Israel, they gathered themselves together. Hadadezer sent and brought out the Syrians who were beyond the river, and they came to Halam, with Shobak, the captain of the army of Hadadezer, at their head. David was told that, so he gathered all of Israel together, passed over the Jordan, and came to Halam. The Syrians set themselves in array against David and fought with him. The Syrians fled before Israel, and David killed 700 charioteers of the Syrians and 40,000 horsemen, and struck Shobak, the captain of their army, so that he died there. When all the kings who were servants to Hadadezer saw that they were defeated before Israel, they made peace with Israel and served them. So the Syrians were afraid to help the children of Ammon anymore. Okay, so it says in verse 1 that the king of the children of Ammon died, and Hanun his son reigned in his place. So this king was King Nahash, And I don't know if you guys remember this, but King Nahash was mentioned one previous time in 1 Samuel chapter 11. So if you go to 1 Samuel chapter 11 and read the story, this is the story of Nahash, the Ammonite king, who went and tried to kill the entire city of Jabesh Gilead. And this was before Israel even had a king. This was right at the rise of Saul when all of this took place. And so this King Nahash decided to go up against Jabesh Gilead, and he was going to pluck out all of the right eyes of all of the men in Jabesh Gilead. That was his plan. And he was going to force all of the people in Jabesh Gilead to serve him, basically. But what ended up happening was before Nahash could go through with his plan, Saul found out about it, and Saul came with a big army and with Samuel as well, when Samuel was still alive, and actually defeated Nahash. So Nahash the Ammonite was a very cruel person, and he was also a sworn enemy of Saul. And because he was a sworn enemy of Saul, a lot of people think that that's the reason that he showed David kindness. Because here's what it says in 2 Samuel 10, verse 2. It says, David said, I will show kindness to Hanun the son of Nahash, as his father showed kindness to me. But the other possibility is that David was actually friends with one of Nahash's other sons. Because if you turn to 2 Samuel 17, it actually mentions one of Nahash's other sons, and this guy was named Shobi. And in 2 Samuel 17, which we haven't gotten to the story yet, David is actually fleeing from one of his own sons, Absalom, who was trying to take the throne from him. So it says in 2 Samuel 17, verses 27 through 29, here's what it mentions. When David came to Mahanaim, Shobi the son of Nahash from Rabbah of the Ammonites, and Machir the son of Amiel from Lo-debar, and Barzillai the Gileadite from Rogelim, brought bedding and bowls and articles of pottery. They also brought wheat and barley, flour and roasted grain, beans and lentils, honey and curds, sheep and cheese from cow's milk, for David and his people to eat. For they said, the people have become exhausted and hungry and thirsty in this wilderness. So right there, this guy Shobi was another son of Nahash, and it's possible that Shobi and David were friends and at least were in good relations with each other, because Shobi is helping David when David is fleeing from Absalom. So those are two possibilities as to how David is connected to King Nahash. But regardless, it sounds like David and Nahash just were on at least friendly-ish terms, civil terms with each other. So when Nahash dies, David was like, you know what? I'm going to send some ambassadors over to Ammon to comfort King Hanun, who was the son of Nahash. So it says that David sent his servants to comfort him concerning the death of his father. David's servants came into the land of the children of Ammon. But instead of being flattered or happy that David is sending ambassadors to comfort him, Hanun, the new king of Ammon, sees David's servants as this big threat because he listens to his advisors and these princes of Ammon. It says in verse 3, the princes of Ammon said to Hanun their lord, do you really think that David is honoring your father? He has sent these comforters to you. Do you really think that he's sending comforters to you? He says, hasn't David sent his servants to you to search the city, to spy it out, and to overthrow it? And Hanun listens to this bad advice. And so what he does is the most childish thing that you can possibly do. It says that Hanun takes David's servants, shaved off a half of their beards, and cut off their garments in the middle to their buttocks, and sent them away. This is probably the most insulting and childish thing you could do to somebody back in these days. And the reason they did it, the reason they shaved off half the beard, was because back in these days, the beard was considered a symbol of honor. Like if a man had a nice beard, that was an honorable thing to have. I would guess as a woman, it would be similar to a woman's long hair, right? If somebody shaved off half of your head of hair, that would be so embarrassing. It would be so terrible as a woman. And I can imagine it's a similar thing as to that. But then also for this king to like cut off their garments in the middle, to their butt, this was very embarrassing. As you can imagine, like somebody cutting off half of your clothing, very embarrassing thing to do. But this was clearly to insult the fact that Israelites were circumcised, because with this insult, these men were basically naked. And this was Hanun, the king of Ammon, making fun of the fact that these Israelites were circumcised. So all in all, it was a very embarrassing, very terrible thing to do to these ambassadors of Israel, especially since these ambassadors weren't coming to spy out the land, and had Hanun, the new king, tried to figure that out, or, asked more questions instead of just like jumping to conclusions, then they would have known that these men truly were just coming to bring him comfort from King David. But Hanun jumped the gun, decided that these men were in Ammon for the sole purpose of trying to spy out the city, and he insulted these men very terribly and also sent them on their way home with no clothing. And it says that when the men came back home and sent word to David, they were so ashamed of how they looked. It says in verse 5, when David was told about this, he sent to meet them, for the men were greatly ashamed. So the king said, wait at Jericho until your beards have grown and then return. So this was very nice for David to do because, like I said, the beard was a symbol of honor. And so David was like, you don't have to go out in public like that. Just, stay in Jericho until your beards are full grown again. Then you can come back in service to me. And this was a very kind thing for King David to do to these guys who were absolutely humiliated, having to make the long trip back home with only half a garment on and half of their beards shaved as well. Very shameful thing for these men to have to do. Hopefully they bought some clothing on the way. But who knows? I mean, I don't know if they had like clothing shops back in these days. They probably didn't. They might have actually had to travel back home basically naked, and with their butts exposed and their front sides exposed. Very, very shameful thing. So David allows their beards to grow back. He probably gives them new clothing. And that's kind of the end of that. However, David is super angry, obviously, because, even though David didn't go and this wasn't done to King David, this was still a huge insult to King David, who was sending these ambassadors to be kind to the new king of Ammon. So in a way, this was done to King David and all of the people of Israel, this huge insult. So it says that the Ammonites knew that they made themselves sickening to David. And here's what it says. When the children of Ammon saw that they had become odious to David, they hire the Syrians to help them in battle. So the Ammonites absolutely knew what they did. I mean, King Hanun is just off to a great start as the new king of Ammon. So they hire the Syrians to help attack Israel. And so David heard about it in verse 7, and he sends Joab and all of the army of the mighty men. Here's what's really interesting about that. David did not go to this battle. And he should have, because we're going to see in the next chapter how David gets into a lot of trouble because he is not helping out his armies. He's sending Joab to do all of his work for him. So David, even though he was a very good king and he was very kind and very loyal to his people and loyal to Yahweh, he was a sinner the same as everybody else. And he might have started to get kind of lazy in his comfort. And so he starts sending Joab, his commander, to do all of these battles for him. So David sends Joab and all the army of the mighty men. And it says that the children of Ammon came out and put themselves in battle array against the entrance of the gate, most likely of the city of Ammon. And the Syrians were on the other side. they started surrounding Israel. And so Joab sees that he is completely surrounded. So here's what he does. When Joab saw that the battle was set against him before and behind, so all around, he chose of all the choice men of Israel and put them in array against the Syrians. The rest of the people he committed into the hand of Abishai, his brother, and he put them in array against the children of Ammon. So here's what he says to his brother. If the Syrians are too strong for me, come and help me. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, I'll come and help you. And what I really love about this is that, Joab doesn't see this as a problem almost. It's almost like, oh, here we go again. Here's another battle. We're completely surrounded. Great. If you have trouble, brother, I'll come and help you. If I have trouble, just, have my back. And that was the entire plan. And I really love that. This shows Joab's heart of courage. He's a very courageous person. We're going to learn much more about Joab moving forward. He's a courageous person, but also kind of a hothead, but as we've seen already, actually. But at least in this, he was courageous for Israel, and he gives this speech. He says, "Be courageous. Let's stand strong for our people and for the cities of our God, and may Yahweh do what seems good to him." So not only did Joab have the right mindset, but he also had the right heart in this battle, because he was first and foremost saying, let's stand courageous for Israel, and God, let your will be done. And what ends up happening is God gives Joab great success. Joab and all the people who were with him came near to the battle against the Syrians, and they fled before him. This means that Israel had a huge victory, and the Syrians all retreated because they could not win in this battle against Joab and the Israelites. And it says that when the children of Ammon saw that the Syrians had fled, they likewise fled before Abishai. So it looks like the Ammonites were fighting against Abishai as well. And when they see the Syrians, who they hired to be warriors for them, had retreated in defeat, they get really scared. The Ammonites are terrified now, and they retreat in defeat. Israel had a great battle. And Joab and all of the Israelites return home to Jerusalem. But the Syrians are now angry. They're mad that they went into battle against the Israelites and were defeated. So they try again. It says that when the Syrians saw that they were defeated by Israel, they gathered themselves together, and Hadadezer sent and brought out the Syrians who were beyond the river, and they came to Halam with Shobak, the captain of the army of Hadadezer, at their head. So David was told about it, and finally David now goes out to battle himself. It says he gathered all of Israel together, passed over the Jordan, and came to Halam, and the Syrians set themselves in array against David, and he fought with them. The Syrians fled before David, and David killed 700 charioteers of the Syrians, 40,000 horsemen, and struck Shobak, the captain of the army, so that he died there. I think a lot of people forget how much of a warrior David was. They think of David as like a harp playing, poem writing singer. He was much more than that. Yes, he was a gifted musician and a gifted writer, but he was also a great warrior. Like when he went out into battle, he succeeded in pretty much every single battle he went in. He was extremely successful as a king and as a warrior. And so right here, he completely defeats the Syrians. It says that he made them all retreat. He killed Shobak, who was the commander of the Syrians, and he killed 700 charioteers and 40,000 horsemen. So now it says that when all the kings who were servants to Hadadezer saw that they were defeated before Israel, they made peace with Israel and served them. Most likely meaning that not only were they in a peace treaty with Israel, but they probably paid taxes to Israel, probably supplied resources to Israel. It says that the Syrians were afraid of Israel after this battle. So it only took 2 battles before the Syrians were totally defeated against Israel. And that doesn't really happen. You don't hear about a country only having to do 2 battles before that other country is totally defeated. That doesn't happen. So that is how strong Israel was. That is how much God was on Israel's side and on King David's side. Now, this should have been a lesson to King David, that he needed to go out into battle, right? I mean, yes, Joab was successful in his battle because Joab had the right heart and mindset and he had courage. But David should have been there. He should have been with Joab with all of the battles that he was fighting against, because David was moral support for Israel. And not to mention, David was also showing that he wasn't afraid to go into battle. And he wasn't just forcing his men to go out into battle for him. So David should have been at all of these battles. And we're going to see how he gets into trouble in the next chapter because he does not go out to battle the way he should. Well, faithful listener, I hope you enjoyed learning about this kind of short story in 2 Samuel chapter 10. But this isn't the first time we're going to hear about this story, because when we go through the Chronicles, a lot of these stories will be repeated as well, and we'll talk more about them when we get to the Chronicles. But faithful listeners, make sure to check out all the links listed in the description of this episode. I have another episode of discussions coming out this week as well for those of you who are members on Ko-fi. But also I have another YouTube video that I've recorded and need to edit and put up on YouTube. And this one is talking more in depth about animals in heaven, whether or not our pets go to heaven, and are we going to see animals in heaven, as well as just a discussion about the new heaven and the new earth and what scripture says about that. So stay tuned for that new YouTube video. Faithful listeners, I really hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I hope that you had a fantastic Father's Day as well, because I didn't mention it, as I usually forget to do on the podcast. So happy belated Father's Day to all of you dads tuning in. Thank you for being good dads, and I hope that you had a really, really nice day yesterday. Nice weather, nice cookout with your family. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow for an episode from Romans. Happy listening, and God bless.